Hey guys, it's Jason Law and my co-host Rich, and on today's episode, Dr. Strand is going to be in the house.
It's not always fun and games for first responders.
05 Central, you show me in pursuit.
But sometimes it is.
Oh my God, he's not wearing pants again.
Sometimes it's dangerous.
Flipping around, look out, look out, look out.
Sometimes it's not.
Antler Boulevard for a snake in a house.
And sometimes it's just plain stupid.
Chihuahua in his lap on a lawnmower.
This is the stupid side of first response.
Dispatch, do I really have to go to that?
This is Code 0.5.
Come in 0.5.
Okay, he's not a real doctor, but I think I can find a piece of paper and I'll write on there and put, he's a doctor, and then put his name on it and I'll sign it.
I'll be your doctor, Jason.
You can put that shit on the wall?
Yeah. Let me read something for you.
All right.
Today is the biggest accomplishment of my career so far. I've made it to certification day and passed the full-time academy. Thank you for my command staff for giving me the great opportunity and helping me along the way. Also, thank you to my beautiful wife for supporting me. I cannot wait to serve my community. That was in March of 2022 by a police officer, right?
Yeah.
17 minutes ago on social media, someone posted, "For the love of God, kids, don't consider law enforcement literally anything else. You won't like it yourself if you survive the 25 years in this profession in these modern times." Same guy that made that post about how excited he was. Just a little over a year later, I'm in the same boat. Slowly became not worth it. So today,
March of 22 to September of 23, and he already hates it.
Mm-hmm. The climate of law enforcement and where we're at today.
Did he elaborate on any on it as to why he hates it?
No, I just got this idea from scrolling on Facebook, and then I started seeing people comment on this post. The guy that made that one post, if you make it to 25, he's been in it for a while. He's a chief of police somewhere. So I started looking at all the comments, and literally every police officer is like, "Yep, I wish I would have done something else. I wish." And then some of them are like, "Well, I can't really do anything else. I'm stuck where I'm at. What am I going to go do? I can't retire now." So,
I can't remember what podcast I was listening to recently. I think it's that poorly made police memes or whatever. Yeah. And they had a guy on there, and he went like 18 years. They said he was just a couple years shy of his retirement. And he said, "I don't care. I hate this shit so much. I'm getting away from it." Mm-hmm. So he gave up his pension to get out of it. Mm. And unfortunately, it's happening more and more. Mm-hmm. What do you think the leading causes are of it, though?
There's numerous things.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's not just one thing.
I mean, there's scheduling, the amount of hours you work. Even if you're compensated for them. But if you're not compensated for them, it's even worse, right? I think the amount of trauma that we go through as first responders and the things that we see that nobody should have to ever see. I think pay is a big thing, or not having a proper retirement, because you doing 30 years in this profession. There's some people, I guess, that can do it that haven't experienced some of the traumatic events that other people have. But even sitting here 11 years in, I can't imagine having to work 30 or 40 years in this profession and continue to do some of the work that I've done. And I think that's what leads to the scheduling, the things you see, politics around the office, and just people not taking good care of their mental health as a first responder leads to the burnout.
Well, I think another big thing is and I've really noticed it with myself. Like before I got into this, I used to do stuff with church and the youth, and I've really become desensitized to life. Mm-hmm. And if something happens to somebody, the first thing that goes to my mind is, well, they shouldn't be a freaking idiot. Mm-hmm. And then that's it. I don't care.
Yeah.
And I used to worry about or care about what other people were going through or what's happening in life and all that. And now I'm like, if it doesn't directly affect me, I don't give a shit.
And
it changes you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where people that have been in it for a while, and like people at our agency, with the years of experience that some of us have, you have to let the guys that are new and coming in. One thing that I think, there's several things that would really help, but letting new guys that come in know that it's okay to ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
But then everyone has to be on board with that. If people at the top aren't on board, and then you have a chief of police that, you have a lieutenant and sergeant and someone else saying, well, hey, we're going to get this guy help because he has this problem. And then a chief or someone says, nope, take his gun, badge, and we're putting him over here. Then it's like you're punishing the guy for coming forward and asking for help. And so I think getting a good program, like we're starting a peer support program at our agency, and just make sure that everybody's on board with that. But then in the academies, they need to have some sort of like officer survival. They have officer survival, right? But they need to have they need to incorporate the mental health stuff into officer survival also. Because I think it's 13.5, per 100,000 officers, 13.5 will commit suicide, 15.3. The annual suicide rate for all departments of 15.3 out of 100,000 officers was above the U.S. general population. The suicide rate is 11 of every 100,000, with the smallest department rate being approximately 4 times the national rate. And so the question is, like, why is it that a small town police department has a higher suicide rate or any mental health stuff than, like, say, Las Vegas Metro, right? Well, it's because they have the resources that small town police departments don't have.
Facts.
I think a lot of it, we have to take ownership of a lot of that stuff too, because I mean, we can on one hand, tell the guys, especially the young guys, this stuff affects you. If you need help, come see us, we'll get you help. But on the other hand, if someone gets in a pursuit, for example, and they get away, everybody makes fun of them publicly. Tell them, they criticize them. Oh, you can't drive. You're not good. Everybody gets away from you. Or if they get into an altercation with, a physical altercation with someone that's maybe smaller than them, and everybody's like, oh, they beat you up. I mean, it's constantly, I know it's the joking nature of law enforcement, and that's the intent, kind of locker room type humor. Mm-hmm. But when you're constantly, every time something happens, you're criticized for it, and to make you feel like you've failed somehow, I think that weighs heavily, especially on somebody with not a whole lot of experience. And it happens without people even realizing it's happening. I see it happen all the time. I try really hard not to criticize people for their mistakes. Most people, I'll joke around with people I know I can joke around with, but I try not to really harp on it because, people will feel minimized because of it. And it's not just us. Like Jared talked about, even the trauma that we see, right? I've been to counselors a couple of times. I've been in emergency services for over 20 years. And, I've seen a lot of stuff, and now I'm working child exploitation cases, internet crimes, and everything that comes along with that, which is completely another level that I can't even explain of shit. But, even the times I went to a counselor a couple of times, just because it wasn't like I went because, I need help. I went because, I've been doing this a long time and I've been seeing a lot of shit. I probably need to talk to somebody just in general. But every time I've done it, I'll start telling a story about something, bad. And there's always a point where I can see the counselor's transition from a counselor to leaning in, excited, and they just want to hear a horror story. And I'm like, I'm not telling them these stories for their fucking entertainment, right? That's the vibe I get it from it. Just like you'd be telling a story to Joe Blow off the street. That's what it turns into, and so I just stopped doing it.
Well, that's the deal too, is that you have to vet your counselors for your guys. And so where we're at, there's 2 counselors, right, that we can send people to that are they have specialized in first responders. So they obviously do counseling stuff for other people, but they've also been all this stuff for first responders. And I go and see somebody just because it's you're cup can only get so full, and then it starts to overflow. And so you have to have those moments where you can empty a little bit out at a time. And you have to make sure you're going to the right person, otherwise it turns into that. And so the people that have been through certain training to deal with first responders, that's one of the things that they also cover is, whenever they're coming to you, it's not story time and don't get all like into it. But then they've also realized that the vicarious trauma also falls on these counselors or psychiatrists or whoever that are counseling first responders. Because, you go in there and you're the counselor, and I'm sitting here talking about how this guy shot himself with a shotgun, and I'm describing in detail all the things that are bothering me. Well, then they're seeing that counselors then are having vicarious trauma from that, and then they even tell those counselors, like, team up together, and if you need to talk to somebody. So there's this thing called EMDR. Like, I'm not super smart and don't know a lot about it.
I know roughly what it is.
Yeah. So it basically has to do with rapid eye movement. Like, people can YouTube it, and it'll explain what EMDR is. And I've done EMDR on several things, and it's really helped me out. But I think that the mindset has started to change a lot, because even whenever I first got into it, it was, if there was something wrong, you didn't say anything,
I remember you called me that one day. You were in that class. You were telling me about it and how you've been able to talk and that you felt better, and you were trying to get me to go. The first thing that went through my mind was, well, I ain't no bitch. I ain't going to that.
Right.
Yeah.
I've been doing it long enough that I'm well aware that we aren't. I truly believe human beings are not supposed to see the insides of other human beings. You're not supposed to. The stuff that we see, we're not supposed to, in my opinion. So, and you're taught early on, whenever you get to a call, that you can't be emotional, right? You have to turn your emotions off, because you can't help somebody if you're emotional. If you're emotional at the time, so you do that call after call after call, year after year, and to me, it's kind of an equivalent of, a light switch. You turn your emotions on, you turn them off. When you go to call, you turn them back on. And I really believe once you turn it off so many times, it's hard to turn back on. And then that's why a lot of times I have, I'm not able to emotionally connect with people outside of work sometimes, because I'm so used to turning it off. It's just off, and I just accept things as they are.
I was talking to Holly about that the other day, because she saw something that she's upset about, or something that's like genuinely upsetting her. And to me, I'm like I listen, but I'm actively trying to sort out whatever the problem is to fix it. So I'm automatically got to find a solution for it. And I may not even need to be trying to find a solution. I just need to listen. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, like, yeah, on the emotional thing, yeah, I got that.
And it's hard to explain that to people, because what they're going to hear is, I deal with people with problems all day long, so this isn't a big deal to me. And that's obviously we're not saying it that way,
right?
But
that's how it comes
how it's going to be received, and it's just, there's no easy way to explain that. So yeah, it's tough.
A big thing on that is the communication too, like you guys were talking about, especially with significant others. They touch on that. So Warrior Rest Foundation here in Oklahoma, they do classes for like peer support and all this, but they have a post-critical incident seminar that I suggest that any first responder go to. Obviously, I'm not going to dive off into details, but I was in there with like veteran law enforcement officers who were telling me, hey, we're proud of you for coming at such a young age and getting the resources to be able to help you, because I wish I would have came 20, 30 years ago and did one of these things, and then I had the help. And so I think that's the big thing with new guys coming in, is in an academy, we need to create some sort of criteria. They have so much stupid stuff in an academy that you could really do without, that should be taught in a field training program, that you can make time for more mental health stuff.
We'll have more coming up on Code 0.5.
If you're looking for a political podcast that goes beyond the headlines, check out the Beltway Briefing. I'm Howard Schweitzer, CEO of Cozen O'Connor Public Strategies. Every week on the Beltway Briefing, our team of former Republican and Democratic presidential appointees, Capitol Hill veterans, and political advocates shares behind the scenes perspective that cuts through the noise. If you want the inside scoop, subscribe now to the Beltway Briefing here or wherever you get your podcasts.
I think they touch on it, but they don't get into. I mean, you can't really get into what you're gonna get into until you're like in it and you've been in it. I mean, they can talk to you about it all day long, but until you've been in a room with a guy with the, that's just a story to people, until you're there, and then it's completely different. Then they understand. Oh, okay.
And I think that's part of the problem too. Is at some of these police academies, they have people teaching it that. They've been certified for 2 years. They went and got their basic instructor, and now they're teaching classes, and they have zero experience. Mm-hmm. And they even have them doing that. So they have them doing full-time academies with no experience on the topic, or people that are super passionate. And that's why I like doing reserve academies. And I've had cadets even tell me, because they went to another one, and then they had to redo some stuff, and they came to ours, and they're like, man, I wish I would have known about your academy ahead of time, because all of the instructors you've brought are super passionate about what they do, and we can tell that they're passionate and that they enjoy their job. And it's stuff like that makes me happy, but then there's, and I'm not to a point of burnout, I would say, but it's like, at my point, I think I'm at that point in a career where it's like I'm just tired of seeing dead people all the time, or whatever it is that we're dealing with. And so I finally convinced myself that, I mean, if you need to go talk to somebody, go talk to somebody.
But the problem is it's a culture thing. I mean, I'm not talking about culture as the generational thing, but it's just a law enforcement culture thing. The curriculum is starting to represent, what we're talking about, it's okay to talk to people and things like that. But the same people that are teaching that curriculum, because that's what they're paid to do, whenever they're not in front of the class, they're right back into the same culture and, ridiculing other people and minimizing, law enforcement officers, or making them feel less than because maybe they need, maybe something bothers them or something. And then they're still going to get that negative feedback from their peers and command staff or whatever it may be. There needs to be a complete culture shift. We're starting it, but we're a ways out.
I've caught myself doing it. Mm-hmm. Guys coming forward, and then, I'm there for them. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, well, we're going to do this, this, and this, right? And then I'll be in a room with like Marcus or something, and I'll be like, man, I can't believe that, he said that to us. And I've seen, this guy do this guy do, and this dead body, and this car wreck, and this fire, and this and that, and blah, 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 blah. Right. And then all he's seen was someone with their finger cut off. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden it's all traumatic. But then I catch myself, trauma to Rich, to Jason, to you is different than what trauma is to me. I may be able to withstand more than what you can or whoever else.
But in the same sense, I mean, law enforcement isn't for everybody. And then when people come in, these young guys, and they're, a year in, maybe 2 years in, and if they're already that, devastated and it's causing issues from these experiences, I mean, and they're no less than, I mean, nothing against it, but it's just not for everybody. Because I think, like I said, I think naturally we're not, constituted to see that kind of stuff.
What was the biggest eye opener for me is everyone preaches about like Oklahoma City, Norman, Moore. They make money. They got this retirement, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So there's a big city police officer. He did 35 years and then retired. And he was telling me that he missed kids' ball games. Mm-hmm. He missed school events. Yep. He missed X, Y, and Z. He missed one of his grandbabies being born because he was at work. Mm-hmm. And then he put in his retirement papers, and the day he was supposed to retire and turn his stuff in, his fucking key card didn't work to get into the PD anymore. Mm-hmm. That's how quick. And then he had his radio on. And he didn't even do his final 10-7 yet, and they had already reassigned his call sign to someone else. Mm. And they had him replaced in a heartbeat.
So I've had this conversation with some other people, and it's hard to accept the fact, but I mean, if you think about it, I've been over here at my agency for 10 years, right? Let's say I do another 10. I'm 20 in, right? But if I do 20 in and I just blood, sweat, and tears for it, and I do, I take my job, seriously. But, whenever my time comes to an end, however that may be, retirement or otherwise, in 5 years, people will still be there talking about me. Maybe in 10 years, in 20 years, no one's going to know who I am. No one. Right. So I've just invested 20 to 25 years, missed, family, like you was talking about, kids, ball games, yada, 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 sacrificed all of that. And then once you're done, you're done. I mean, there's no legacy. I mean, they're going to tell stories, and they're going to reminisce, this and that. But, at some point, no one's going to know anything about you.
Yeah.
What imprint are we leaving back?
Right.
Yeah.
I came to that realization because you guys, I'm in a smaller agency. So, our stuff's way different. We're only 3 people and I've done that. Anniversary's been like dressed to go do whatever we're supposed to go do and then get a call and that ain't happening. You know what I'm saying? And making up and arguments. And, matter of fact, when my twins were born, I used to work overnights. And when that happened, I was on something. I had to find somebody to go to where I was to be able to get to Oklahoma City to actually be there when they were born. And I pulled up, when I got there, the staff was giving me crap because I had my belt on, which was stupid, I thought, because they didn't want me taking my belt into the delivery room with everybody else. And I'm like, that's a whole other subject. And I'm like, you want me to take this off and give this to a random person when it's safer on me and I'm just going in there. But anyway, I got there right as they were pulling them out. It was that close. You know what I'm saying? So, the given everything, and it's kind of like, for what?
Right. And I'm not even arguing that, I'm not saying what we're doing is not important, right?
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying that I need an attaboy or I need a mural made for me afterwards.
Right.
I'm just saying that there has to be a balance. You can't sacrifice your entire life for others. And then at the end of it, you're, retire after 2025 and you've destroyed your own relationship.
Right.
Your kids won't talk to you. And now you're sitting at home with nothing, nothing to enjoy in your retirement. And then, it's just like Jared and I the other night, we worked a fentanyl overdose call, which we've had several. I mean, everybody's working on it, but we show up 11 o'clock midnight. And as soon as we get there, it's one of the family members on scene, the significant other. They were just cussing us up and down, telling us it was our fault that someone was dead and all that kind of stuff. And it's just, that's what we sacrifice, being with our kids to go out and experience. Yep. And it's just, again, I'm not saying it's not worth it, but it's tough.
Yeah. They got it from this dude that y'all know about, that y'all ain't done nothing about. And now look, and this is your fault.
Oh, it wasn't even that. It was, I tried to console, it takes a lot for me to just shut that switch off and say, I'm done. And so I was talking with another family member. And I said, listen, I get it. I've been through this. I have a family member that's an addict, blah, 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 blah. And so this family member is like, hey, he really cares. He's trying to help. And then she looks at me and says, well, I hope your family member overdoses and dies. Ooh. And so I walked to Marcus. I said, I'm done.
Out.
And he said, man, you can't do that. And that's the hardest thing, is that's the thing that people do not see. Yeah. And for some reason, and I get you have to play politics, right? But if I was an agency head and stuff like that was happening, those would be the body cam piece. Look at what our law enforcement. Not only did I have to watch a 23-year-old male get stretched out or brought out on a stretcher with active CPR because he's dying or dead. Yep. I have to deal with this person yelling at me. You know.
And it's not just the yelling. I understand that it's an emotional situation.
Right.
I mean, it's high emotions, but it's when you walk into that after you've left the comfort of your home and your family to walk into that, it becomes very unpleasant.
You left where you were and walked into essentially chaos. It's your job to sort that out,
right?
And kind of calm it down, and then after you've seen all that, you have to go back and pick up where you were before you left, and they at home still have no idea what you walked into, kind of balancing that out.
Yeah. And I'm not necessarily like complaining about that part of it. I'm just saying it's significant. And most people, hell, a lot of people in law enforcement don't even realize it. It's just you almost just kind of have to accept it at some point. But then once you do it for a little bit longer, then you start asking the questions, how healthy is this for us involved? I mean, somebody's got to do it. I mean, I get that, but it's just hard to explain to people.
And I don't think that, because people look at it and they'll say, well, my uncle, did 20 years at this police department and retired and he's perfectly fine. Or my uncle and I got a buddy that did this. Well, they don't realize that even though, like Oklahoma City, for example, right? Huge police department. Okay. You could work there for 20 years and never discharge your firearm and never work a homicide, never work a rape all the way through. Or you go work for these smaller agencies and you're working all of this stuff through yourself. I mean, I was involved in my first shooting, or my only one, before I even went through the academy. And then as soon as 3 months out of the academy, I was in a pursuit where I was being shot at, and there's a lot of law enforcement officers that may not experience that. But other people don't understand that because they just think that law enforcement's all the same too. Like working down here with the amount of, trauma that they would have to deal with just 3 guys. And then not to mention if 2 of his guys call in sick, then he's responsible for calls 24 hours a day, 7 days a week until those guys come back. I don't know how he does it. But that's I don't think people see out there like, well, it's your job to do this. Well, they don't see the 16, 17, 18-hour days that we do not get compensated for. We don't get overtime. We don't get comp time. We don't get this or that. But people don't understand that. And that's another thing that I think a lot of admins need to take a look at, is that there are scientific studies that have been done recently that prove certain shifts are better than others. And 8-hour shifts are absolutely terrible for your mental health and health as a law enforcement officer, because your hypervigilance. Okay, so if I work Monday through Friday and I work 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Okay. My hypervigilance is still active after I get off work for up to 16 hours after I get off. So we're rolling into my first day off on Saturday, and I'm still in my hypervigilance until, noon? Something like that?
Yeah.
Okay. So then I really didn't get a full day off because now my body's just now starting to come down and relax.
You also didn't get good sleep.
You didn't.
Because you're still at a heightened level of,
And, so then you're still at that heightened. Well, even after that, on your very first day off, you're still not going to get as good of sleep as what you could, right? But you're going to get okay sleep. And then Sunday rolls around, and that's your only really full day off that you feel may feel energized or okay. And you're back at it on Monday. And so there's studies that have shown that like 10s, for example, are good.
Well, you're talking about the Sunday thing?
Yeah.
And you go back to work on Monday. They're talking about later in the day on Sunday, you're already preparing yourself mentally to go back to work. So you never get like a real full 2 days off. You get like 18 to 20 hours.
Yeah. Yep. And that's the, so they,
and I've read where, the 10-hour shift is supposed to be like the best one to do.
Yeah. Cause you actually get your 2 days off, and there's actually studies that on nights and midnights, 8-hour shifts increases the chance of high blood pressure and other medical issues. And I don't have all the studies in front of me because I wasn't prepared to dive off into all this today. But I think that there's not only for your guys' health right now and retention, because as an agency head, you're not going to be there forever either. So why not create a standard that can be followed by other agency heads, and this whole thing of, well, I'm the boss and I'm in charge and this is how we're going to do it is bull crap. You need to be thinking about the people that, and I'm working on myself as doing that as a leader too. Right. But as a leader, you need to be a servant to your people,
right?
And a lot of people They don't get that. There's a difference in a leader and someone that has rank.
So I'll also say, I mean, I think a lot of times I feel like people forget that we're human beings too. Like human beings with emotions, families, and lives, and all of that. And I say that because, and I don't mean this as a blanket statement for all agencies and all, administration, but, sometimes people are just boiled down to numbers. You're just, we need a deputy, we need boots on the street, right? So we're not too concerned about work schedules or hours or whatever. We need somebody patrolling and fielding calls, and that's the most important thing. And I get that. That is the mission of the sheriff's office or any law enforcement agency. But I think that we also are, the public at times also forgets that we're also human beings too. We're not just an NPC that's showing up,
100% on
Let's not
that.
get off.
And I think a lot of that is caused by and I don't mean to dive off into the media and social media and all that kind of stuff, but you were talking about the guy, you said someone, well, my uncle or whoever done 20, 25 years and he's just fine.
He's just fine.
But here's the difference. So in the 70s, 80s, 90s, I mean, you did your calls and you at home, and then, it was reported. I mean, here's what I'm getting at. We live in an age where people make judgments immediately, and they have access to media immediately, but there's no regulation on how that media how those videos that are posted on social media are out of context or edited, and what happened before and after, and everything in between, which is important. I mean, the totality of everything is how we operate. So when you see these 30-second clips of, a law enforcement officer getting into a physical altercation with someone or whatever, and then people title it however they want to title it to incite rage, that's oftentimes that's the only interaction most people see with law enforcement, and they accept that as what it is, and it's absolutely out of context and incorrect.
It's because of people that are reporting these stories that are happening or whatever is because they're looking for the entertainment value to get the dollar sign or the clout.
Likes,
And
or
I'm
the
not even
views.
I'm not even necessarily speaking about the news media. They try to do a really good. I think at least locally, I think they try to do a good job.
Yeah.
I'm talking about these self-uploaded
Yeah,
clips
that's what I'm
from
talking about.
some bystanders at getting gas, and they see whatever, and then they take everything. They don't even know what happened.
Yeah, I'm going to
No
take this
idea.
full video and just put the part where the cop's beating the hell out of somebody so I can get 10 million views and maybe get $50.
And I'm not saying there aren't some asshole cops out there.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some bad. I mean, we're human beings. That's what people forget. There's a percentage of human beings that are lazy or dumb or just assholes, and cops are human beings too. Unfortunately, that's but it's a very small percentage.
Here's what I want you to do, or so anybody, if you've done it before, then you'll know what I'm talking about. As far as the news media stuff, and this is where I think it causes a lot of issues with law enforcement. If there's an officer involved shooting and the guy's white, then they label it different than they do if it was a person of color.
The way they title it, yeah.
And it's fine to identify who you can do that in the story, but then on the title it's white police officer shoots Native American male or black male or Hispanic male.
Yeah.
But it's not white police officer shoots white, and I mean, so I think that's a lot of, is that it to me, whenever I was first in law enforcement, I would see that stuff as like they're trying to basically insinuate things that aren't there, like that we're targeting certain people.
Yeah, they're planting the context in which they want you to view it.
And so the news media, they cause a lot of burnout with police officers too. I mean, look at what happened after. Now, I don't agree with anything that happened in the George Floyd deal, right? But then after that, just the constant everything that happened after that caused good cops to walk away.
We had applications for reserves and part-time and all that, and then that happened and nothing. Like, I'm sure you guys have seen that. You know what I mean? Like, nobody wants to get into it.
But I think it's also good. I mean, not a good, I guess it wouldn't be, I don't want to say a good thing, but I think people like that whole incident, I mean, shouldn't have happened
Absolutely.
the way that it did.
Absolutely.
They deserved everything that they got.
People need to be held
But then I
accountable.
think it also made other police officers, it ran off bad cops too, because they realized, oh crap, I'm not going to be able to get away with stuff anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the bigger agencies. You have to worry about a lot of that. Our agency, like, and yours and stuff like that, it's easier to, I mean, you can identify that stuff pretty quick. Where, you know, if you're working for Minneapolis or Detroit or Chicago, you got cops out there that are beating up people all the time and getting away with it. And it's not acceptable. Or look at Baltimore, that one cop that was in charge of their gun task force, their trace task force or whatever, and he was stealing dope and money and guns and selling them on the street.
Yeah.
You know, and people think, oh, that's all cops would do, you know. But I think it's a whole huge topic that, I mean, there's resources out there for new guys, but it's the how to avoid the burnout is a lot of self-care, I think. And I've started to realize that, and that's why you guys give me shit for taking off all the time. But I don't even have a kid on the way yet, and I've realized I literally put my own personal health aside for this place, you know, and I worked so much to make myself the best law enforcement officer that I could. And then I look at it, and now I'm back in the gym, and I'm taking care of myself, and I'm losing weight. And I look at it and go, man, I could have done this 10 years ago, right? And
those are some of the things they talk about.
Yes.
Like exercise, getting a hobby, something to get your mind off of it.
Getting a hobby, unloading your cup. So going and seeing somebody, you know, I go see someone once a month, even if I don't need it. I will go and talk to her, and we'll just sit there. Well, how's everything going? Oh, it's going good. Yeah. I mean, I'm feeling great with this. Well, how's work? It's good. I'm a little unhappy with X, Y, and Z, but I'm doing good. And we'll just sit there and talk for an hour.
Yeah.
And maybe that's all that I need. But I've learned any critical incident that I used to view things and say, well, that wasn't a traumatic event, but it was. I worked a suicide, and a few years ago, and it was a 19-year-old girl, and she had shot herself in a car. And everybody, you know, we got there, we're working it, and I'm going and packaging the gun on the hood of my car, and all of a sudden I just started crying out of nowhere. Don't know why. Don't know why. Now I look back on it after the resources and stuff that I've had now. That was my tipping point where everything was too full for me. Yeah. And I didn't identify and take care of it then. And so then after that, I had another one. And after that, I had another one. And then eventually it got, you know, to where it was not too much to where like I couldn't do my job or I was unstable or anything. But you realize that like it's just works too much for you. And so I don't even know where I was going at with all that stuff. But it's and I think it's okay to talk about that stuff. And that guys know that, like, man, I've got 11 years in, and I'm having to do this. It's okay for you having 2 years or 1 year in. And I personally think that agencies should pay for their guys to go see somebody every quarter.
Yeah, at least yearly.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, especially in ICAT cases. I mean, it's
becoming industry standard on ICAC investigators. That's what we're going to, because it's difficult because you can't explain it. Like you can try, but there's no way I can sit here and explain to you guys or anybody, you know, watching like an infant being victimized by an adult with full audio, and you have to watch it. I mean, you can't have prosecution without being able to testify it is what it is. And it's just, I like I said, even telling you that, and as disgusting as you guys' faces look, just hearing me, I can't even tell you how terrible it is. So you definitely have to, it's an adjustment. And the industry standard for ICAC investigators, the recommended best practices is to have a program like that where you're talking to people, you're debriefing, because it's just tough.
I think, I mean, even on child abuse cases.
Even in ours.
Before you start talking, we're going to cut this one short, and we're going to do a part 2. You guys come back next time for the conclusion of this episode.
You have been listening to Code 0.5, the lighter side of police work. If you have ideas or suggestions for our show, we'd love to hear from you. visit our website at code05.co. That's code05.co. And please consider making a donation at our Patreon page, patreon.com/code05. Be sure to use the digits 05. Thanks for listening to Code 0.5.